He said goodnight. I said nothing, because if I opened my mouth, I might have begged him to stay. The thing about silence is that it doesn't just fill a room. It settles. Like dust. Like weight. And after a while, you stop noticing it until someone new opens a window. Or laughs. Or just breathes differently. That was Eli. A different breath in a room that hadn't had any in years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Melanie. 43. Married. Respectably. Quietly. We live in a tidy house with 3 bedrooms, one for us, one for guests, one we never figured out what to do with. There's a cat named Clover, who prefers windowsills to laps, and a husband named Daniel, who prefers spreadsheets to conversation. It's not tragic, our life. It's just undisturbed. A life that doesn't ripple, even when stones are thrown. A life with the volume turned low. Eli hadn't been in that picture for over a decade. Daniel's college roommate. The kind of friend who sends a text once a year with "still alive" and nothing else. They'd shared bunk beds and late-night ramen. I'd met him once or twice in our early years. He was funny, lanky, talked fast, had a crooked smile that made you wonder what he wasn't saying. Then, silence. People move, change cities, marry, forget. And then he called. Daniel took the call in the kitchen, absent-mindedly stirring a pot of chili. "Eli's in town," he said. "Wants to come by. Says he misses our cooking." "Our?" I asked. Daniel shrugged. "You know what I mean." He didn't ask if I was up for it. He assumed, as he always did, and I nodded as I always did. I didn't expect much. I didn't expect anything. But when I opened the door that night and saw him standing there, coat unbuttoned, wind in his hair, hands in his pockets, I felt something I hadn't in a very long time. Myself. He looked the same, but fuller. His face had lines now, not deep but present. The kind you get from living somewhere with real light and air. He smelled like cedar and maybe coffee. Or memory. I couldn't tell the difference. "Mel," he said, like the years between us hadn't happened. "You haven't aged a day." I laughed because that's what you do when someone lies kindly. Daniel came down the stairs, grinning like a man unburdened by subtext. "Still crashing into lives like you own them," he said, pulling Eli into a quick, back-pounding hug. We ate chili at the table. No candles. No fanfare. The same napkins we'd had since before the pandemic. Eli said the food was better than he remembered. I told him it was the same recipe. He said maybe it just tasted different now. He talked more than I remembered. Laughed deeper. Smiled longer than necessary, but never at me. Not directly. Still, I felt it, like heat in a room that hadn't warmed up yet. After dinner, Daniel retreated to his office with the excuse of a late email. Eli followed me into the kitchen, offering to help clean up. I waved him off. "You're a guest." "Then let me feel useful," he said, rolling up his sleeves. We moved around the kitchen with careful choreography. I handed him a plate. He rinsed. I wiped. The faucet hummed between us. The only sounds were ceramic and breath. And every now and then, his hand brushed mine. Not intentionally. Not quite. But it happened. And each time, something inside me shifted a little. Like a door unbolting from the inside. Clover jumped onto the counter once. Eli startled and laughed. I laughed too, and then I caught myself. My voice sounded strange and used. "You still have that chair?" he asked suddenly. "What chair?" "The one by the window." "I remember it. You used to sit there reading, right?" I blinked. That was from the old house, years ago. But yes, I had a chair like it now too. In the corner of the living room, tucked beside the front window, facing the street lamp. "I do," I said, surprised. "Funny you remember that." "Some things stay," he said, drying a glass. Later, when he left, he didn't just walk out the door. He lingered, turned in the frame, said something about the next time, but not to Daniel, to me. And then he was gone. I sat in the chair by the window that night, knees tucked up, hands cold despite the throw blanket. The street lamp outside flickered like it had something to say, but wasn't sure how. Daniel didn't notice I wasn't in bed, didn't call for me. The cat curled at my feet without concern. And in the stillness, I tried to pretend nothing had changed. That dinner had been ordinary. That laughter hadn't felt like permission. That I wasn't thinking about the way his eyes never quite landed on me, but hovered like they wanted to. The next morning, I found one of Eli's gloves on the side table. Leather, worn smooth at the edges. I texted him before I could think. "You left something. Come get it when you want." 3 hours later, he replied, "Only if you're making chili again." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My thumbs hovered over the screen like they were afraid to decide. Instead, I made tea and sat by the window. Again. The chair creaked softly under me. And somewhere in the distance, I felt a change gathering like weather. The second time he came over, it was supposed to be casual. It wasn't. The air was different from the start. Not thick, not heavy. Just aware of itself. A little too still, like the room was waiting. Daniel had invited him again. "Eli's free tonight. Says he's craving something with garlic." Craving? I repeated. Daniel didn't hear the echo in my voice. Or maybe he did, and he chose to ignore it. I wore a sweater with a neckline I usually avoided. Nothing scandalous. Just softer than usual. It wasn't for anyone. I told myself that twice, maybe 3 times, as I smoothed it over my hips in the hallway mirror. The garlic roasted early, its scent blooming through the house like memory. I poured a second glass of wine before anyone even arrived. The first one didn't settle the nerves. They talked about everything and nothing. Baseball, grad school stories, someone named Erica who had apparently eloped with her yoga instructor. I stirred the pot of pasta and tried not to laugh at the wrong times. Eli noticed. He always noticed. Not openly. Not rudely. Just noticed. Dinner passed in pieces. Too fast. Too loud. Not enough. Afterward, Daniel excused himself. "I've got an early call," he said, kissing the top of my head. He didn't ask if I was tired or needed help cleaning up. He just left, like it was a script we'd all memorized. That's when it happened. The mistake. Not a moment. Not a kiss. Just the shift. I stood at the sink barefoot, rinsing plates, hair twisted up and falling down again. "You always clean everything yourself?" Eli asked behind me. "I like things neat." He didn't laugh. Just stepped closer, took a plate from my hand, rolled up his sleeves like it was his kitchen too. "You don't have to." "I know," he said. "I want to." I handed him a towel. Our fingers brushed. This time, it wasn't accidental. We didn't talk much. The clatter of dishes filled the silence. The scent of garlic still lingered, but fainter now, softened under the weight of something unspoken. I turned to grab another glass. And he was there. Too close. Not touching. Not quite. His presence filled the room. Not loud, not demanding. Just undeniable. I froze for a second. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. That I'd been waiting. He said nothing. Just looked. Not at my face. Not at my hands. At me. Like he was memorizing something he knew he shouldn't. As if whatever he was doing, it was already too far gone to stop. I felt the heat crawl up my spine, settle at the base of my throat. I stepped back, but not far enough. My breath shook. The air wasn't still anymore. It was waiting. Trembling. "I should get going," he said finally, voice rough around the edges. I nodded. Couldn't form words. My heart thudded too loud. He didn't move right away. He lingered. At the threshold of something. "I'll see you," he said. Not a question. Not quite a promise. I forced a smile that didn't reach anything inside me. "Good night." He didn't answer. Not then. That night, I lay awake long after Daniel's breathing settled. I counted the tiny cracks in the ceiling. I pressed my hands to my stomach like it might hold something in. I remembered the way Eli had looked at me, not with hunger, not even desire, but with recognition. Like he'd found something he hadn't realized he was missing. And worse, I had looked back the same way. The third time he came over, it rained. It wasn't planned. He'd been out. Nearby. He texted Daniel. Said he didn't want to drive home just yet. The lights flickered as the storm swelled outside. The living room darkened. Daniel lit 2 candles and headed upstairs again, grumbling about email. I knew the rhythm by now. Eli stayed in the kitchen, leaning against the counter like it belonged to him. I poured 2 glasses of wine before he asked. "It's raining," he said. "Nothing gets past you." He smiled, that crooked, quiet thing. "You always get sharper when you're uncomfortable." I didn't answer. He stepped closer. Still holding his wine, still casual. "You make it easy to remember things," he said. "Like what?" "Like wanting things that weren't mine." I froze. He didn't. He took another sip, eyes never leaving mine. Not a dare. Not a demand. Just truth. And then he stepped back, gave me space again. As if he hadn't just unraveled a thread I'd spent years stitching closed. I didn't sleep again that night. Daniel mumbled something about the meeting in the morning. I nodded. He kissed my shoulder, the same way he always did. Routine. And yet, I felt a different breath at my neck. One that hadn't even touched me. Just stood near enough to be remembered. The 4th time, it was me who suggested it. Daniel was working late. I texted Eli. Just the words, "If you're around." Leftovers. I didn't expect a reply. He showed up within the hour. He didn't knock. Just stood in the open doorway, the same raincoat, eyes full of something I didn't want to name. We ate on the couch. Quietly. Close, but not touching. Halfway through the meal, he set down his fork and said, "You look tired." "I am." "You don't have to carry everything." "I'm not." "You are." He reached for my hand. I let him. For 1 breath. 2. Then pulled away. He didn't flinch. Just nodded. Like he understood more than I wanted him to. "I'm not trying to ruin anything," he said. "You're not," I whispered. We sat in silence after that. The kind that didn't need anything said. The kind that curled up beside you and stayed long after you left the room. That night, he said goodnight softly. Too softly. And I didn't answer. Because if I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure what would come out. Not grief. Not guilt. Just a need. Unspoken. But loud. He walked to the door slowly. It was such a simple thing. Feet over floorboards. His jacket draped over one arm. The faint click of the hallway light as I turned it off behind him. Normal things. Mundane. But not tonight. Tonight, I couldn't look directly at him for more than 3 seconds at a time. My skin was too warm. My thoughts too scattered. The air between us, thick and vibrating like a held note. He hadn't touched me. Not once. Not even by accident. And, still, it felt like everything had happened. The dinner had ended half an hour ago. Daniel excused himself early, something about a meeting the next morning, his body already halfway upstairs before I could offer to pour another glass of wine. Eli stayed. Of course he stayed. And I didn't ask him to leave. We lingered in the kitchen, where the light was low and the garlic still clung to the walls. I stood near the sink. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. That small, unthreatening distance between us. It held so much more than space. It held what we weren't saying. He didn't look at me directly. Not often. Just these side glances that felt heavier than full attention. But I felt him watching when I reached for a towel, when I stretched to set a bowl in the upper cabinet, when my blouse shifted just enough to expose the slope of my collarbone. Every inch of me was awake and aware of that of him. "I should go," he said finally, the words soft, almost inaudible, like he wasn't talking to me, like he was trying to convince himself. I nodded without looking up. But I didn't move. Neither did he. The silence stretched, awkward in any other context. But not this one. This one was measured. Careful. Waiting. "Thank you," he added, taking one slow step toward the door. "For dinner." There was a pause. Then, as if summoned by something outside of either of us, his voice shifted. Lower. More deliberate. And, for not asking me why I stayed. Still, I didn't look at him. I couldn't. I knew that if I did, I'd give something away. So I said nothing. My hands were suddenly busy folding a dish towel that didn't need folding. He moved to the door and rested his hand on the knob, but didn't turn it. The light from the porch spilled through the small, frosted pane. It made his silhouette look blurred, distant, almost like a memory I hadn't lived yet. He turned just enough to speak over his shoulder. "Good night, Mel." That was all. Soft, casual. But the way he said my name, like it mattered. Like it still mattered. And I said nothing, because I couldn't. Because if I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure what might fall out. A whisper. A confession. A plea. Stay. The door clicked softly behind him. And I stood there in the hallway with nothing in my hands and everything in my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't move for several minutes. The porch light shut off automatically. Only then did I take a breath. Later, after I turned off all the lights and padded softly through the house, I found Daniel asleep, one arm flung carelessly across the bed like an invitation I no longer knew how to answer. His mouth twitched in his sleep. He looked peaceful, untouched by the storm I was trying to hide inside my skin. I didn't crawl in beside him. Not yet. Instead, I drifted down the hall, sat in the chair by the window, and pulled the blanket over my legs. It was dark outside. The kind of dark that flattens everything into a single shade. No dimensions. No shapes. Just a black hush. But inside me light. Bright. Painful. The kind that didn't come from joy or sorrow, but from pressure. From holding something you couldn't release. I pressed my palms together. Leaned forward. Rested my forehead against my hands and tried to remember how to exist inside my own body. Because I didn't belong here anymore. Not in this chair. Not in this quiet. Not in this house that hadn't changed in a decade, while I was slowly becoming someone I didn't recognize. Someone I wasn't sure I wanted to recognize. The following days passed like a dream I couldn't wake from. Daniel didn't notice anything. Or maybe he did, and chose, mercifully, not to name it. He asked if I wanted to go see a movie Friday night. I told him I had a headache. He nodded, already scrolling through his phone before the sentence finished. I wanted to feel guilty. I didn't. I wanted to feel afraid. I wasn't. I only felt the echo of the pause, of my silence, of his "Goodnight, Mel," looping in my mind like the end of a song I couldn't stop humming. Eli didn't reach out. And I didn't either. That was our agreement, wasn't it? Unspoken, but firm. If nothing happened, then nothing had to be answered for. But inside me, something had happened. Something massive and irreversible. Like a shift in gravity. And no matter how still I sat, my center kept tilting toward where he had stood. A week later, I ran into him. Not in a hallway. Not by invitation. By accident. Or fate. I'd gone to pick up dry cleaning. He was across the street, standing at the corner outside the bookstore, looking down at his phone. He hadn't seen me. I could have kept walking. I could have turned back. Instead, I paused. My breath hitched. My stomach pulled tight. He looked up and saw me. Our eyes locked. No smile. No wave. But he crossed the street anyway, and every step he took felt like a slow unraveling of the distance I had been trying to rebuild inside myself. "Hey," he said, voice rough. "Hi." The pause stretched. Then, "You've been okay?" I nodded. "You?" He shrugged. "Yeah, just been thinking." "About what?" He didn't answer. Just looked at me like I already knew. And I did. Because I had been thinking too. Too much. All the time. In quiet moments. In loud rooms. In sleep. Especially in sleep. He didn't ask to walk me home. He didn't need to. The weight of what was unsaid settled over us both like dusk. "I should go," I said. He nodded once. "Of course." He turned, paused, looked over his shoulder, and said, for the second time, "Good night, Mel." And for the second time, I said nothing. But this time, I didn't look away. The door clicked shut, and the room didn't empty. It stayed full, not with air or sound, but presence. A kind of pressure that outlasts the moment. The kind of pressure that hums beneath your skin long after the source is gone. I sat down in the chair by the window. It was late. The hallway light still flickered with the echo of his departure. I didn't move to switch it off. My husband didn't call out. Didn't ask why I hadn't followed him to bed. That had become our rhythm, polite silences, separate shadows. He was upstairs, asleep or pretending to be, under a comforter that still bore the indentation of my side. But I stayed in that chair, knees pulled up, palms pressed to my thighs to keep them from trembling. Outside, the sky was bruised with dawn. But I wasn't ready for morning. I hadn't come down from the night before. The truth is, he hadn't touched me. Not a hand. Not a mouth. Not anything you could point to in daylight and accuse. But I had felt him. Felt the weight of him. Just by proximity. Felt his breath somewhere near my shoulder. Felt the potential between us like electricity in a storm just about to break. And the worst part, the part one hadn't dared to name, was that it had been enough. Not enough to satisfy. Enough to change me. When Eli came by again, weeks later, he was a different man. Softer, more distant. He joked more. Stayed seated. Kept his hands folded. He didn't linger by the sink. Didn't offer to help with dishes. Didn't look too long. He was safe. Which made him unbearable. Because I remembered. I remembered the air between us, thick and pulsing. I remembered the way my name sounded in his voice, low and careful. I remembered the way he had stood too close behind me in a room that was suddenly too small to hold the tension between two people pretending. Now he was polite. And that was worse. Because the absence of a thing doesn't erase it. It sharpens it. I knew it had been real because it was gone now. I moved differently after that. Not dramatically. Just slightly. I wore perfume I hadn't touched in years. Lipstick for the grocery store. I bought a new bra and wore it on a Wednesday for no reason except that I could. And every night, I sat in the chair by the window. Not to wait for him. To remember myself. Because somehow, in the thick silence between almost and never, something had awoken in me. And it refused to sleep again. Daniel never asked. Not about Eli. Not about why I'd started spending my evenings in the living room again. Not about the pauses in our conversation that had grown wide enough to drive a truck through. Instead, he kissed me once in the hallway on his way to bed and said, "You've been quiet lately." I nodded. "I'm thinking." He smiled, the way people smile when they think that's a good thing. About what? I'm not sure yet. The night Eli told me he was leaving, it was almost anticlimactic. We hadn't spoken in days. Not since the last dinner. Not since I'd let him leave without a word again. He found me sitting in the park, where the late afternoon light hit the trees just right, and the wind carried the scent of damp leaves and something unnameable. He didn't sit at first. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching the water ripple in the pond. "I'm leaving," he said. I didn't look up. "End of next week. Job in Denver." The silence stretched. "How long?" I asked finally. "Don't know. Maybe for good." A pause. "I wasn't going to tell you. Thought it'd be easier." "Easier for who?" He didn't answer. And I didn't press. Eventually, he pulled something from his pocket. A folded piece of paper. He set it on the bench beside me. "If you want to see me again before I go," he said, "it has to be your choice." I looked at the paper, but didn't touch it. The wind fluttered the corner, and I pressed it down with one fingertip. "I don't regret any of it," he added. Then he walked away. Didn't look back. Didn't wait. Didn't leave the air the same. The note was simple. An address. A time. And 3 words. "Just if you want." No name. No pressure. No promise. I didn't open it again that night. I lay in bed beside Daniel, eyes wide, staring at the ceiling. I watched his hand resting on the blanket, fingers curled slightly. I tried to remember the last time those hands had made me tremble. Not out of fear. Out of hunger. I tried to remember what it had been like to reach for him and not hesitate. I couldn't. But I remembered the pause at the door. The soft goodnight Mel. The almost. I went to the address. I won't describe it. It doesn't matter. Not really. It was a house. Or a rental. Or a room. Something temporary. Like him. Like me. He didn't say much when I arrived. Neither did I. We sat on a couch. Not touching. Then barely touching. Then no longer able not to. And for the first time in years, I felt not desired, but chosen. Not because I was convenient. Or familiar. Or easy. Because I was wanted, fully. Even with all my quiet. Even with all my mess. Even with all the ways I had tried so hard to disappear. We didn't say it was goodbye. But we didn't pretend it wasn't either. When I left, he didn't ask if I would call. And I didn't ask if he'd write. That wasn't what we were. We weren't future. We were permission. A week passed. Then another. The air got cooler. The days shorter. Daniel noticed something in me. Not absence, exactly. But shift. "You've changed," he said once on the porch. "You're quieter. Not sad. Just somewhere else." I wanted to tell him everything. But how do you explain to someone that your body returned before your spirit did? That you came back whole but not the same? That someone looked at you once and made you real again? Instead, I reached for his hand. Let him believe whatever he needed to. Let him love the version of me that fit back into the life we had made together. And now? Now I fold towels differently. I pick underwear with purpose, even when no one sees it. I wear perfume for my own neck. I speak a little less, but mean more when I do. I've learned how to carry silence like a secret not of shame, but of knowing. I don't walk to his street anymore. I don't check my phone hoping for his name. But every so often, in the stillest hour of the night, I press my thighs together under the blanket. Not from memory. From presence. From the fact that something in me survived. And is still awake. He said goodnight. I said nothing, and in that silence, I began again.